Well, welcome back, one and all, Zoomers and and anybody that the Zoomers here tonight share this with to the final of 6 sessions of the 2025 Grant Wood Country Forum, hosted by the Cedar Rapids Public Library and offered by a cadre of Grant Wood art and poetry and culture and land enthusiasts. And so we have people join us from far and wide, as with all things Grant Wood being our springboard for discussion and ongoing connection. And I couldn't be more tickled to just say a big thank you to the Cedar Rapids Public Library, and also ongoing participation by the Cedar Rapids Museum of Art, which has, I believe, the largest collection of Grant Wood works and available. Not, of course, his things are flung coast to coast, but they have the lion's share, and it's been a delight to have them with us every season. Um, I want to thank everybody who's come this season, and be sure to look at the YouTube channel of the Cedar Rapids Public Library if you'd like to go back and roll around in any of these sessions, and uh, if share them with people if you like. So this is an open and free forum. Uh, now, what we're doing tonight is we have a delightful, oh, I call it a three-legged stool of offerings tonight on this week, which is the birth and death week of Grant Wood. He was born on February 13, 1891, died on February 12th, 1942. And so without further ado, I will let you know about our three presenters tonight, and then we'll get started. Our first presenter tonight is Joe Coffey, and he is one of our ardent enthusiasts who brings a different perspective and helps us immerse ourselves in nooks and crannies that we might not otherwise think about. And I feel like we're going to get especially nookie and cranny tonight, Joe, with his session called Small Treasures, the Joy of Collecting Grant Wood Ephemera. And Joe, for those of us who may not know or who watch this recording later, I would love for you to just say briefly your connection to the area and your connection to Grant Wood. And that goes as well for following. We'll do the poetry portion of our evening. And I would invite anybody who wants to read a poem that they might have written to offer that up after Joe speaks. And then we'll segue right into our poet laureate of Iowa, Vince Gutierrez. Couldn't be more tickled to have him here with some brand new offerings. Speaking of immersion, through a different lens, and also he'll talk a little bit about his role as judging the Grant Wood Award category for the annual Iowa Poetry Association Grant Wood Poetry Prize, which this forum sponsors. And then, last but definitely not least, we are welcoming Ignacio Darnaud of West Hollywood, a art writer, lecturer, and film producer who would like to present Arnold Comes of Age, a coded window into Grant Wood's queer life. And so happy that we're at the stage in our forum series where we are really getting into some other aspects of Grant Wood's life. And so looking forward to that, as well as a really heartfelt piece that of creating writing that he's going to share, and I will follow that with a piece of my own from the point of view of Nan Wood Graham. So that is the program for tonight, and looking forward to each and every bit each section of that. So let's turn the reins over to Joe Coffey and get this celebration week started.
Great. Thank you, Elaine. Just want to double check, make sure everyone can see my title screen. Do I have the right screen projecting here?
Yes, you do.
Okay. All right, let me shrink this so I can see my copy and then we'll be off and running. All right, well, here we go. I'm excited to tell you a little bit about myself. I lived in Cedar Rapids for about 20 years. I worked in the media there. I did some marketing and freelancing there as well. I just really enjoyed my time there. I was lucky enough to live in an area where a lot of Grant Wood related things happened. So between my job and my own personal interest in my own neighborhood, Grant Wood just kept popping up. And so I eventually started writing pieces about him here and there. And I've just enjoyed applying a researcher's tools to this amazing man whose art and legacy everyone here tonight we all know, love, and appreciate. So tonight's topic is the joy of collecting Grant Wood ephemera. Now, as we delve into the topic of collecting Grant Wood ephemera, let me begin with a story that has stayed with me for years. A story about an artist who was so moved by a painting that it literally brought him to his knees. It's a story about the power of art to move us, the power of art to inspire us and to connect us to the world and each other on a deeper level. In the early 2000s, I had the privilege of interviewing Byron Burford, an artist who studied under Grant Wood at the University of Iowa. I was working on a master's thesis that had a lot to do with Lester Longman and Jackson Pollock and the painting that kind of kicked off the abstract expressionist movement. So Byron Burford was right there in the middle of it. So I had a great time talking to him and learning all about his role in art in Iowa. During our conversation, Burford shared a remarkable experience that has become a defining moment for me. He told me about a visit to the Museum of Modern Art where he came across a painting that spoke to him. It literally brought him to his knees. As he rounded the corner, he saw the painting and it hit him like a thunderbolt. He dropped to his knees, arms outstretched, completely overcome by the sheer power of the artwork. Tears streamed down his face as he surrendered to the moment. Now, Burford was a talented artist with a fascinating background. In addition to studying under Wood, he did a big post office commission in the South at a very young age. He was heavily involved in the restoration of Jackson Pollock's mural. Much of his own art focused on circus themes. He even ran away with a circus as a kid. He kept coming back to spend time with circuses throughout his life. He even spent time as a drummer in a traveling circus. What struck me most about his MoMA story wasn't the painting itself, but his response to it. When I asked him what the painting was, he gently pointed out that I was missing the point. The painting's title and the artist's name didn't matter. It was the experience itself, the way it touched him, the way it opened his eyes, his mind, and his heart to something new and as profound. That is what he was trying to tell me about. Burford's story highlights the importance of being open to experiences like his. Otherwise, those experiences won't happen. We can walk right past a great piece of art that could stir our souls, and if we're not open, it won't stir a thing. This openness is what makes art so powerful, after all, and it's also what makes collecting so meaningful. Wouldn't it make sense for Burford to want to see that MoMA painting again and again after he had that experience with it? Even if that would have been through a reproduction? Would it surprise you to know that Burford loved the idea of making posters for his art exhibitions? Art that served as collectibles that promoted his art. Each item we collect has the potential to hold a story, a moment, or an emotion that connects us to something bigger than ourselves. Collecting is, in many ways, an act of preserving those connections and rediscovering that sense of wonder. Grant Wood's art and legacy offer a particularly rich field for collectors seeking these kinds of connections, big or small or somewhere in between. Wood's work captures something timeless, whether it's the warmth of rural life, the strength of community, or the beauty of the landscapes that shaped him. Grant Wood was a collector, by the way. He collected books and had several autographed first editions by authors like John Dewey, Robert Penn Warren, Carl Sandburg, Ruth Sokow, and of course McKinley Cantor. He also collected antiques. So, acting on this desire to feel things through art, collecting ways to do it, this behavior goes deeper than you might realize. First of all, it's not just us. We see examples of collecting across nature. Bowerbirds and magpies are known for gathering objects of a particular shine or color. All manner of weird stuff is collected by pack rats. This instinctual behavior has deep roots in our own evolutionary past. For over 200,000 years, our ancestors lived as hunters and gatherers, with survival depending on finding new resources, new tools, and new ways to be comfortable. Saber-toothed tigers and weather events kept us alert and constantly on the move to survive, constantly seeking comfort. It's easy to imagine how this behavior became hardwired into our DNA. Our brains still reward us with dopamine hits when our hunting and gathering instincts lead us to new and novel things that make it easier to achieve comfort. What comforts us is a little different these days, though. I came across this video recently. Obviously, Grandma died. Grandma collected salt and pepper shakers. Grandma collected a lot of them. Something tells me that the sons and daughters and the grandchildren will all get a couple of sets of Grandma's salt and pepper shakers, and they will cherish them, and they will help them remember her. There is a spectrum to collecting, of course. At one end, we have extreme behaviors. At the other end, there are people committed to the minimalist ethos. They throw away almost everything, including artifacts that could bring them and future generations joy and meaning. Aristotle's Golden Mean suggests that the path in the middle between the extremes is often the most balanced approach. So with collecting, it's not about hoarding or discarding everything. It's about finding that place in the middle, curating pieces of our world that speak to us. On this journey we call life, collecting makes us comfortable. It satisfies our emotional, intellectual, and social needs. So the motivations for collecting Grant Wood ephemera are diverse and multifaceted. Here are what I believe are the key reasons people would collect Grant Wood ephemera. First of all, emotional connection. Collecting can reconnect us with memories of the past. Items related to Grant Wood might remind us of childhood, family, or earlier moments of inspiration. Intellectual curiosity. Collecting ephemera is a wonderful way to learn more about Grant Wood's life and art. It can also deepen your understanding of the evolution of art and its cultural significance. Aesthetic appreciation. You might collect Grant Wood ephemera simply for its decorative appeal. You can surround yourself with the beauty and meaning of all things Grant Wood. There's community engagement. Collecting can connect you with communities of Grant Wood enthusiasts, art lovers, or those interested in Iowa and Cedar Rapids history. It's a great way to bond with others who share your passions. Investment and legacy. Now, some items in your collection might appreciate in value over time, making them, I guess, an investment, but I don't think this should be your primary motivation, even though it can be a nice bonus. Hobby and enjoyment. Collect for the sheer pleasure of the hunt. Enjoy the satisfaction of completing a category set or achieving a collecting goal, large or small. Personal fulfillment. Collecting can give you a sense of accomplishment and joy, especially when you find rare or meaningful items. It can also spark new adventures, whether it's exploring antique shops, fairs, or online marketplaces. Creative inspiration. Your collection might serve as a source of inspiration for your own creative endeavors, whether that's in art, writing, or in other fields. Let the themes, colors, or stories behind Grant Wood's work fuel your imagination. Personal identity. Your collection can reflect your own personal interests, values, or identity. Perhaps it speaks to your connection with Grant Wood's themes, such as rural life, community, or Americana. Educational purposes. Collecting can be a great way to educate others about Grant Wood's art and legacy. Your collection might open doors to teaching opportunities or public exhibits, big or small. And historical significance. You can collect items that shed light on the time period in which Grant Wood lived and worked. By preserving these artifacts, you can help maintain cultural heritage for future generations. So I'm curious as to which of these motivations resonate with you. As I introduce you to some categories of Grant Wood ephemera, I'll use this iconography here that I've created with this nomenclature that I've put together to help you understand which motivations are particularly relevant to which categories. Okay, here we go. Here are the categories. Oh my God, right? There are many that I have not included here. We have a lot to get through tonight, but I thought these were worth spending a little time on. Let's start with folk art representations. Oop. Hang on. I clicked the wrong thing and my slides are out of whack. Oh, goodness. Thanks for your patience. Okay, here we go. Folk art dolls and other representations of the American Gothic couple and Grant Wood himself are fun to collect. The collectibles in this category are often whimsical. Motivation-wise, aesthetic appreciation is what this is all about. Creative inspiration could prompt you to make your own folk art. The hobby angle is at play. You can have fun with this category. Hunt these down. They are out there to be found. I've also got the personal identity icon on this one. I could see how someone collecting these could become the American Gothic collector man or collector lady. Figurines, action figures, and dolls are common collecting categories in a wide range of enthusiast areas. Even if you're not going to collect this category, who among us wouldn't like a little American Gothic couple or a Grant Wood figurine to put on our desks, right? I actually met the lady who bought these chairs you see here. She has an amazing art collection. Interestingly enough, she does not collect Grant Wood art, but she told me when she saw these chairs, she just had to have them. I call this category folk art representation because I think the best stuff is made by other artists. There are collectibles companies making some of this on a larger scale, of course. Buttons and pins is a fun category for hobbyists. I've also included the community and emotional connection icons here because many of these buttons and pins are tied to communities and events that some of you may have fond memories of. A lot of the buttons you see here are from the Grant Wood Art Festival. That was an annual celebration of Wood, his art, and his legacy held in Stone City annually. Nan Wood herself used to come down for the event. It eventually became biannual. I'm not sure if it's just sporadic now or if it's on hold. Maybe someone can inform us during the Q&A here in a bit. The JC's organization has a pin collecting element to it. For years and years, pins were made for chapters and events. Folks in the JCs enjoy trading and collecting these. It makes sense that Iowa JCs have been known to use Grant Wood's art for their pins. This one's kind of neat. They made this for the 2002 Winter Olympics in Salt Lake City. Museums and historical sites make pins sometimes, of course. Buttons and pins often end up at antique stores and garage sales and on eBay. This is a fairly inexpensive, fun category to get involved with. American Gothic parodies. You all know about this. I've got the hobbyist designation on this category. It is a never-ending hobby. Once American Gothic gained notoriety in the early 30s, it became a popular motif to copy, often in magazines and cartoons by other artists. Perhaps because the painting says so much about America, it became known as somewhat of a visual metaphor for America. So riffing on the farmer and wife or daughter and other contexts is an effective way to make a statement about a wide range of things. These parodies pop up all the time. Nan Wood herself collected these. This is a photo of a page from her collection in her scrapbooks. This is a Hallmark card that she sent to a friend. Imagine getting this in the mail from the actual lady in the painting. Here's a card Yoko Ono had made. She sent this to friends. A lot of people collect these parodies. Once you start collecting them and your friends know, they'll start sending them to you. It's the Grant Wood ephemera collecting category that keeps on giving. Magazines. This is one of my favorite categories. I've identified three main collecting motivations here. Intellectual curiosity. Every magazine is a time capsule you can read. Historical significance is a big factor in collecting these. Every magazine has its own history, of course, and they take pride in exercising their particular editorial voices. I also have educational purposes on here too. These are great sources of information to help you with your own research and with your own writing. Of the magazines with Wood's art on the cover, it's particularly interesting to collect the ones from when he was alive. He cut deals for these. It was a big deal to get your stuff on a magazine cover, of course. Plenty of magazines and journals have put his art on the cover since his death, often when there's a feature piece on him inside. There are plenty of magazines that have included mention of or even big features on Wood during his lifetime, sometimes without putting his art on the cover. It's fascinating to read these and to see how the narrative about him evolves over the years. Magazines continued to write about Wood after his death, of course, they still do. This issue of Life magazine you see here came out right after he died. It's got a big retrospective on his art and his life. This wartime issue of Esquire is a fascinating piece of, I don't even know what to call it. It is a nationalist-minded magazine that's trying to rally the country to get excited about the war. They ran a double-page fold-out of Wood's Midnight Ride of Paul Revere because that appeared to fit with the patriotic spirit of the issue. American Girl magazine is, or was, the magazine of the Girl Scouts. He was featured in issues before and after his death. It's also important to note that Popular Press art magazines run some notable articles on Wood from time to time. Some of the writers you will recognize. They often bring new perspectives on Wood's work, or maybe some new ideas tied to a Wood exhibition going on somewhere. You can also find Wood's writing in magazines and journals. For more on this topic, check out my other presentation to the Grant Wood Country Forum this year that is already on YouTube. And of course, let's not forget the Grant Wood Country Chronicle. This exquisitely curated, edited, and crafted chronicle of Grant Wood articles, stories, and artistic expressions, edited by our fearless leader, Elaine Mattingly, largely from the participants of this forum. To collect magazines and journals, just turn on your radar. Head to antique stores, go online, search eBay and online sellers like Biblio and Abe Books. There's a lot out there. Okay, the next category, exhibitions and collections materials. These are items of historical significance that will feed your intellectual curiosity and, of course, help you with research that can help educate others. Some items in this category can exist in other categories. For example, gift shop posters are clearly also in the category of gift shop stuff, but this one you see here is different. This small poster advertises the memorial exhibition of Grant Wood's paintings and drawings at the Art Institute as part of the 53rd Annual Exhibition of American Paintings and Sculpture in 1942. It was arranged by AIC director Daniel Catton Rich after Wood's death. This poster is 7 by 12 inches on thick stock, and it was actually used around town in Chicago to promote the exhibition. Exhibition catalogs are another multi-category item. Sometimes they're little catalogs that tell the stories of the items in the exhibition. They'll tell the story of curating the items in the exhibition, or they'll tell the story of how the museum restored some of the items. Sometimes they're full-blown books featuring new scholarly articles, and sometimes an exhibition corresponds with a whole new catalog raisonné inside its exhibition book. Catalogs from exhibitions that featured or included Wood's works are out there. You can also find catalogs for auctions that included his work. These pop up in estate sales, random bookstores specializing in old books, as well as Biblio and Abe's Books online and eBay. Some things to keep an eye out for when you peruse these. Descriptions of regionalism and Wood's role in the movement. There is an evolution in these descriptions. The Grant Wood story itself evolves a bit over time, and the role of the Great Depression as something Wood's work was responding to. Museum exhibition brochures, of course, and general brochures from museums that own significant pieces by wood. These are free and they serve multiple goals, mostly around getting people interested in visiting the museum. But they're really cool, and when you look at them over time, it is very neat to see what there is to see there. I love how materials from exhibitions and collections can help people continue to learn about an artist's work and life well after they've left the museum. Now, books don't really fit the definition of ephemera per se. Ephemera refers to things that exist or are used for a limited period of time, but I'm including them as a category here just because books about Grant Wood are so important to anyone interested in wood. What you see here are some very important books in the wood canon, so to speak, a mix of popular press and scholarly books, books tied to important exhibitions, books about regionalism. There's some historical fiction here. Folks in this forum have their books on this screen. I would say this is the most important slide in this presentation, obviously. If you collect books on a subject that fascinates you, there's joy in that. And don't let that stress you out if you can't read them right away. The Japanese have a word for this, tsundoku. That is the act of collecting books and the source of joy and anticipation this brings, knowing you have untold stories waiting to be discovered. Okay, let's get back to the collectible stuff you might not be aware of. Grant Wood cookbooks and recipes are a thing. Yes, talk about an emotional connection. These recipes will bring many of you home. It's fun to collect things you can eat, right? So let's start here. Grant Wood's recipe for potato salad was in the February 1935 issue of Better Homes and Gardens. It's for pomme à l'huile, or potatoes with oil, from French restaurants of the day. Note the earthen bowl reference, which has been, thoroughly rubbed with garlic, a key component of how Wood liked to make salads. That was the namesake, of course, for his Garlic Club, an occasional gathering of well-known people in Cedar Rapids, mostly artists and artistic types, who lunched at the Travel Inn at 313 3rd Avenue Southeast in the 1920s. Joan Liffring Zugg published a series of cookbooks associated with Grant Wood starting in 1979. They included recipes from the models who posed for American Gothic, from the artist who painted them, and from people who knew them all. Highlights include McKinley Cantor's old-fashioned tomato soup recipe. Cantor wrote for the Cedar Rapids Republican, was a member of the Garlic Club, and oh, by the way, he wrote several novels, won a Pulitzer, and 9 of his novels were made into movies. When the New York Times book review editor slagged one of his novels, Wood wrote a letter to the editor to defend his friend. Other recipes in these books include Winifred Cohn's beef bechamel, Grant Wood's cabbage rolls, Meredith Wilson's present slaw, Nan's cheese loaf, Ruby Pyle's poppy seed cake. Ruby was Arnold Pyle's wife. Mrs. Isabel McKeeby's hot water pie crust. Isabel was the wife of Henry McKeeby, the guy with the pitchfork. And Hattie Weaver Wood's George Washington omelet. Cooking in the Land of Corn is a 1953 cookbook compiled by the parishioners of the Church of St. Edward, Catholic Church in Waterloo. Grant's brother Frank and his wife were members. Nan wrote a nice little essay for this cookbook and contributed her own detailed version of Grant Wood's strawberry shortcake recipe, a recipe that once wowed his guests so much that he never made it again out of fear of ruining his reputation as a cook. You can find these at estate sales, vintage bookstores, and on eBay. Coins have been a staple of collecting forever. I'm sure you remember the Iowa quarter from 2004 that featured Wood's artwork. There are also some commemorative coins that have been struck here and there, and decorated versions of coins that people like to collect. The most valuable Grant Wood coin is the gold one you see at the bottom here, technically a medallion, not a coin, of 1 ounce gold bullion. It was part of a series the U.S. Mint struck from 1980 to 1984 to compete with the South African Krugerrand and other bullion coins. Iowa Representative Jim Leach had a role in getting Wood on one of the 10 designs. Other honorees included architect Frank Lloyd Wright and musician Louis Armstrong. Today, the medallion goes for about $2,000. The worlds of Grant Wood and stamp collecting converge to make a nifty set of 4 stamps you can collect. Two stamps featuring Wood's Young Corn were issued by the Postal Service in 1996. It's the same stamp, really, but to stamp collectors, one is lick and stick and the other is peel and stick. There are some slight differences that can be seen with a magnifying glass. The U.S. Postal Service American Gothic stamp was issued in 1998 as one of 20 different stamps printed in sheets honoring 4 centuries of American art. Stamp collectors hunt down various commemorative cancellations, programs from day of issue ceremonies, and stuff like that. Interestingly enough, the 4th stamp to feature Grant Wood art comes from Sharjah, one of the 7 United Arab Emirates. Sharjah is a significant emirate known for its rich cultural heritage and its strong emphasis on preserving history and artistic cultural traditions. For Sharjah to tip the cap to American art is very cool, actually. Choosing American Gothic made sense, didn't it? Okay, books featuring Grant Wood art commissions. This is a cool category to collect. You can read what you collect and then analyze Wood's ability to capture characters, their dispositions, motivations, the overall vibe, the setting, and whatnot. I've got the personal fulfillment icon on here too, because this actually is a hard category to collect. The thrill of the chase is at play here. Wood was commissioned to create art for the dust jacket covers for some of these books. Those don't hold up so well over time, so they're hard to find. Some were for specific editions that had limited press runs. He did a dust jacket cover for the 2nd edition of In Tragic Life by Vardis Fisher. The 1st and 2nd editions of that first book sold fewer than 2,000 copies total, despite favorable reviews. It is very hard to find with the dust jacket on it. Wood also did a dust jacket cover for the 2nd edition of Passions Spin the Plot, and this is the 2nd book in Fisher's autobiographical series of 4 books. Wood also illustrated dust jackets for Plowing on Sunday by Sterling North and Oliver Wiswell by Kenneth Roberts. He also did a cover for O Chautauqua by Thomas W. Duncan. He illustrated Farm on the Hill, a children's book by Madeline Doro Horn. This involved 8 full-page color illustrations of farm life. Especially rare are editions signed by the author and Grant Wood. What a fun signature, right? Main Street by Sinclair Lewis was a best-selling novel before Wood got involved and illustrated the Limited Editions Club edition. The Limited Editions Club was created by George Jesse Macy in 1929 as a fancy schmancy book club that produced special editions with new artworks by notable artists. A club membership was $108, and that got you something like 10 books a year, and that was the only way you could get these books. Picasso and Matisse both did a series. Thomas Hart Benton and John Stewart Curry did a couple of series apiece. The new printings of a series were limited to 1,500 copies, and each was signed by the artist who illustrated it. Wood numbered and signed his books at the back. Wood's version of Lewis's Main Street was part of the club's 8th offering of books, and that was from 1936 to 1937. It contains all 9 illustrations that Wood made for the book. Note that a later printing of this edition in 1970 did not include the 9th illustration, Village Slums. The original was in a private collection at that time, so they couldn't get a shot of it to include it. For those seeking to craft authentic narratives or simply delve into the nuances of life in the Midwest during Grant Wood's era and a little bit before it, books about this region are invaluable resources. I highly recommend exploring this collection you see here, as it offers rich insights and invaluable context. And you can reach out to me and I can give you this list and let me know if you have some you think should be in this collection. Associated American Artists is the group Grant Wood got in cahoots with to sell his art to everyday people. Most notably, he sold 18 of his 19 signed lithographs, mostly through the company's mail order catalogs. These catalogs are still floating around and they are fascinating to look through. The actual AAA items sold in the catalogs are still out there to be found as well. These are items you can buy to decorate your home. They hold a bit more historical value because they were actually made by Associated American Artists and survived. We all know about the lithographs, but did you know they made playing cards and fabric so you can make curtains and pillows from a Grant Wood motif? What you see here is the company's translation of Wood's Midnight Ride of Paul Revere into a repeatable pattern that works on fabric over and over again. They made greeting cards. They made glassware through a collaboration with Steuben Glass. These are really hard to find. The glass was really expensive, and the cards are not something that people usually keep. I think most overlooked in the Associated American Artists stuff are items you can collect today. They are gelatone prints. Wood's lifetime bridged the gap between clunky, inefficient color printing processes and almost modern processes. Associated American Artists hoped gelatones would be as popular as lithographs, but they just didn't generate much interest. These pop up at auctions every now and then and rarely go for more than a few $100s in really good shape. Faded ones in terrible shape can be found at corner antique stores in Iowa for around $10. A quick side note, colotypes were a kind of a color version of a lithograph. A company called the New York Graphic Society made really great colotype prints of spring in town. You can sometimes find these in really good shape at auction houses and on eBay for a few $100s. I believe they were last printed in 1960. And finally, the historical stuff category, full of historical significance to spur your intellectual curiosity and assist in your search for more things to write about. This bust of Wood, for example, was made in the 1940s by a company called Banthrico out of Chicago. I got this thing, and then it took me down a rabbit hole, and I ended up writing a fun little piece about the history of novelty piggy banks as a promotional tool for banks, and how consumerism's shift away from saving physical money led to the downfall of piggy banks and Banthrico. Imagine your surprise when you dig around long enough and find things like a Turner Mortuary advertising book full of drawings by Wood, or a U of I directory with Wood's office info in it. Here's a book honoring soldiers from Lynn County who fought in the Great War. You may recognize this picture of Wood it contains. Here's a program from an anniversary service for Grant Wood's first school. It is full of neat information and the names of all the students who went there. Maybe you remember this from my presentation last year, a piece of sheet music Grant Wood illustrated the cover for. We brought it back to life with the help of musician Matt Tolentino. And look at this. Here's a postcard Nan wrote to thank someone for sending her a cartoon containing an American Gothic parody. Deb and I have talked about this. There is someone who is constantly selling letters from Nan on eBay. We take screenshots of them for the most part, although I did buy that Thanksgiving card. They're really helpful for understanding who Nan was, what she thought of things, and how certain Grant Wood legacy things worked under her stewardship. And finally, this might be my favorite piece of Grant Wood ephemera, a Grant Wood autograph. Now, I don't even collect autographs, but this one is a little different. Look what he wrote here. Ars longa vita brevis, whatever that means. That is the Latin phrase that was put on the new U of I art building. It means art is long, life is short. The building opened in 1936 and Wood taught there for several years. It is slated to become the university's innovation center at some point, of course, although things got slowed down after COVID. It would be interesting to see what the timeline is like now. All right, final thoughts. Byron Burford's story reminds us that collecting isn't just about accumulating objects. It's about the journey, the connections, and the stories we uncover along the way. Each piece of Grant Wood ephemera, a magazine, a church cookbook, an exhibition guide, offers a unique window into the past, a chance to connect with the artist and to appreciate the cultural impact of his work. Just like Burford was moved by that powerful painting, our collections can move us too, inspire us, and connect us to something larger than ourselves. Ephemera can be a source of joy, reflection, and a deeper understanding of the world around us. So I encourage you all to embrace the hunt, savor the thrill of discovery, and build a collection that reflects your own unique perspective on the life and work of the remarkable and inspirational Grant Wood. Thank you.
Bravo.
Oh, well, I don't know how we could have wished for anything better on the topic of collecting Grant Wood.
Oh,
There we
thank you.
go. Does anybody have any questions for Joe?
I have a quick story, Lane, and I don't know if Joe knows this, but the Sharjah stamp, I actually was the one that gave it to Nan, and my name got in the newspaper because I had found a set of stamps at the store because I collected stamps. So the short piece says, Mrs. Graham learned of the existence of the American Gothic stamp when a young Riverside collector, Debbie Beilstein, discovered one in a package of stamps she had purchased for her collection and sent it to her. So there was a big article in the Riverside Press Enterprise from 1972. But anyway, when Joe put that stamp up, I'm like, oh yeah, I know that stamp. I actually have one myself.
Oh, cool.
Oh, what a great connection, Debbie. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh.
Yeah. So, yeah, Nan was, the article is really cute because Nan wanted to write to the postmaster in Sharjah. So she took it to make a copy. And there was a young man who got all excited because he was from there. So he wrote in Arabic on the letter so that it would make its destination.
Super, super great. Super interesting. Just nifty.
Yeah.
Okay. And we can always, by the way, reminder, we are going long this evening. I don't want any of our presenters to feel pressed. We're just going to keep this party going as long as we need to and want to. So if you have questions and you want to circle back, you think of something later and want to circle back, that we'll make sure there's space to do that. So there you go.
I thought it was a presentation. I am a collector who's addicted as well, but not to Grand Wood stuff, but to other things. One minor correction: the Grant Wood gold medallion or medal made by the U.S. Mint is a half ounce, not an ounce.
Oh, thank you.
Small. Clip.
Oh, see, it's just not everywhere you could go that you could find this level of expertise. Just randomly it just pops up. Oh, goodness.
But it was marvelous, Joe. I love how you set the stage for collecting.
Thank you.
Oh, goodness. Well,
The gold coin or the gold medallion also was made into a miniature, like really tiny. And I have one, it's almost like a little charm. Not just a large size or, $2,000 gold bullion kind of thing.
cool. And yeah, some of the books that you showed, like all the like the Garwood book and that slide that had all those on it, and Sue Taylor and all that. Some of those are just, I mean, amazing sources. It's so interesting, and some of them are hard to find too. They're not all real readily available. You got to go digging for some of them. But some of them are just fantastic, because one of them has the whole which one is it? It's I can't remember who he's by. Has the whole revolt against the city essay in it. It was one of them, I think, that came out in the 70s or 80s.
I think that's the James Dennis book, I believe.
Yes, that's it. The James Dennis book.
It is.
Yeah.
It is. Yeah.
And hey,
Yeah,
speaking of books, if you go to Prairie Lights in Iowa City, when you go down the stairs, look above the stairs, they have a Byron Burford painting there. It's one of his circus paintings. It's fantastic.
Oh, that's cool.
Joe,
Now,
I might say too that
Ben Staley, and he's the guy last year that showed some before and after shots in our forum. I was talking to him not long ago, and he told me he had one of the set of cards with Grant Wood's lithographs on. So I came home and I went to Google and I just put in um, cards, playing cards with Grant Wood, and they're for sale there. And they have several of the different lithographs. So if you want to start collecting something, that might be a good way to start.
Great advice, Paul. People might be surprised at what they could find of historic value or just interesting old Life magazines or whatever for less than $10. I mean, that stuff is out there, and when you get one of those, a 1942 Life magazine, that's 4 or 5 hours of fun, if you ask me. I mean, it's really fun to collect that stuff.
Now, didn't I hear somebody say at one of the previous sessions that there's like loads and loads of these old Grant Wood Festival buttons in Anamosa
Right.
in the Dr. Brown building, maybe? Former,
No, no, it's across the street in the little museum they have.
okay.
But the one I was the one that said that because I asked about him and she said we have barrelfuls. So if you're interested in those, that might be a spot to start.
Yep, yep. Oh, goodness. Well, I'm thinking that we can circle back with more thoughts, and maybe segue into the uh, poetry portion of our evening. Is there anybody here who wanted to share a poem before we get started with Vince Gutierrez's remarks and sharing of his work? And unmute yourself if you and you can think about that too. We can always circle back, if you're like, I wasn't.
Yeah.
Oh, Linda's got one. Okay, great. And okay, and okay, we will. Am I echoing? Something weird's happening. Okay. Let's go ahead. Linda, are you ready? Would
Sure.
love to hear it.
Sure.
Awesome. Okay,
Um,
and Linda, can you tell everybody kind of your connection to the area?
Sure. I'm Linda Armstrong Pedersen, and my parents owned a farm about halfway between Stone City and Viola. Last time we talked about the Green Mansion. If you stood on the hill where the Green Mansion was and looked west, our house was on the second ridge to the west. So very much a Grant Wood country girl growing up. And that's kind of where this poem ends up being from. So it's called Into the Magic. I think it was Isabel Bloom that might have said Stone City was a magical place. And I know Dorothy Montgomery, Bunting Montgomery has borrowed that too. So with that in mind, the poem is Into the Magic. Raindrops fall on rounded trees, gaining momentum as they merge, rushing down to find the sea. Their power grows as they surge. Now a rushing stream, they begin to cut into the yellow clay and the soft black dirt. First a crack, a crevice, a ditch, a gully, pulling, pushing to move the soil away from the roots and stone. Not just once, but every time it storms, until hidden valleys define the edges of the rounded hills. If you're lucky, as I was as a child, you'll find a special valley in Grant Wood country that you can call your own, where decades of raindrops have pushed and pulled to carve an island in the center of a wide valley floor. The island, bounded by gullies too wide to jump, has walls too steep and deep to climb. There is a bridge, a natural one, of tangled tree roots, left exposed by the rushing waters. The bridge only needs a brave explorer to step carefully over the roots and into the magic. the magic of sound as the birds call to one another, the magic of insects as they buzz and flit and swarm, the magic of the seasons where colors and textures change from soft pastels of an earthy spring to the cooling shade of summer with splashes of vibrant color from butterflies and wild berries. The autumn reds and browns of fallen leaves and crispy steps over frosted plants. The white and grays of ice and snow and rabbit tracks to tell you you are not alone. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Linda. Uh, I know for a fact that Linda knows that land like the back of her back of her hand for sure. Oh,
Walked a
thank
lot of miles of it.
yes. Yes, those roads. My goodness. Um and by the way, are you a first cousin of my mother's or a second cousin? Second.
Your grandpa and my father were first cousins. So
That's
I'm,
right.
yeah.
Yeah. And so many farmsteads dotted along the area there near Viola and Stone City. So
And a
it's
lot
just,
of times the shortest distance was not on the road. You went cross country.
yeah. Right. Oh goodness. Well, thanks again, Linda. And if anybody else has something they want to share, be sure to just let us know and we'll plug you in. But without further ado, I would love to segue into Vince, Iowa's Poet Laureate, Vince Gutera. Excited to have you here. And please, Vince, tell us a little bit about your background, your journey to becoming Iowa Poet Laureate, your experience with the judging the category a little bit, and then, of course, hearing your work. So this is exciting. Thank you, Vince.
Thanks, Elaine. I just wanted to send everyone, there's a link to my blog. It's in the chat in case you want to find out more. I have lived in Iowa since 1995, so this is my 30th year. I am from San Francisco originally and went to grad school in Indiana. That was my connection originally to the Midwest. And then moved to California for a few years and finally moved back to the Midwest in '95. And I taught at the University of Northern Iowa for almost 30 years. Just retired a year ago. And Elaine, you mentioned my journey to becoming Poet Laureate. I don't know that there was a journey as such. I mean, I just wrote poems, all my life pretty much. And it became, so I became a professor of poetry at UNI. And then a little over a year ago, I got I think it was a call, or maybe it was an email. I know it said that the state of Iowa contacted me and said that I was a finalist for the Poet Laureate position and would I serve, if selected. And I said, sure. And so they do that behind the scenes. The candidates don't know until it's almost the end. And so anyway, so then I was selected, and I've been Poet Laureate now for about 10 months, something like that. Let's see, what else did you want me to talk about, Elaine? You're muted.
You served as a judge for the Grant Wood Poetry
right.
category for yeah.
Last year I was the judge of the Grant Wood division of the Iowa Poetry Association's annual contest, and I am doing it again this year. Those poems are coming in now, and I'll be reading them soon. I forget offhand how many. At least 100 poems that I received that I selected from, and what I was looking for when I was judging this contest was first of all, I wanted to select poems that were good on a craft level. So that was first and foremost, and then that approached the art of Grant Wood. It not only through description, often people would describe the work, and I wanted more than that. I wanted to see something personal, something honest, about it, so that any readers of the poem would learn something about Grant Wood himself, or about the writer, or about the landscape, and so that's what I looked for really was something larger than just a description of the artwork. Okay, well, let me share my screen here, and I've got some poems here. This is the very first one I did almost 5 years ago now, or 4 years ago. And this is a poem about this work of art that I'm sure many of you know. Joe showed us some fabric that was based on that image. Okay. The moon, always waiting, speaks. As I look down on Earth, my orbiting partner in space, I am puzzled by many things, and I just watch and wait and watch. Tonight, I see a forest of green moons, dark baby moons sleeping all together. I know when they grow into teenage moons and begin to shine, they'll move into the buildings with the square window panes, their adolescent lunar light radiating out into the meandering road. As adults, during the day, when their moon glow is hidden in sunlight, they will climb the spire of the church and launch themselves into the sky to begin their journeys outward through the galaxy, each becoming, like me, a goddess for some planet. But for now, the young moons are simply content to watch the goings-on of the silly little humans, like the small man riding by on a black horse, leaving no trace, no track on the trail lit by me. Something that I always, thanks, Elaine, something that I always loved about Grant Wood's work, even before I knew I was going to live in Iowa, was his trees. I just loved his little spherical trees that you can see right here. And when I started to write this poem, I wanted to have a point of view where the speaker, in this case the moon, doesn't know very much about what's going on, and so I wanted to do something with those, with the what would the moon think about the little spherical trees. Okay, so that's a lot of my work is in fantasy and science fiction, my poetry, and so this is kind of a fantastic poem. Okay, and then so this poem was published by the Cedar Rapids Museum of Art in 2021, and they were doing April is National Poetry Month, and so they were looking for poems about artwork, what are called ekphrastic poems, and so that inspired me to write this poem. And then I got to thinking more about, the moon in my poem doesn't know who Paul Revere is and could not care a whit about Paul Revere. And I thought, what about these people that Wood has painted into the image? So I here is a close-up, a detail of that painting. And I got interested in these people, over here, standing outside their house as Paul Revere rides by. Who was that masked man? Who just rode by making such a clatter in the middle of the night? Maybe a highwayman wearing a kerchief for a mask, up to no good. all in black, astride a black horse, one of the 4 horsemen. Do you think, dear wife, that the end of times are nigh upon us? Could you hear what that rapscallion was yelling? Who's coming? End of times indeed. Has this anything to do with us? Come, let's back to bed. Did you see that beautiful moon above? I wonder what the man in the moon thinks about all this uproar. Surely we are safe here, wife. Won't good King George see to that? So I was trying to imagine what a person who was probably not interested in the politics, of the time, would think about all of that. So that's this guy right here, standing in the doorway, and I think that must be his wife that he's later addresses in the poem in the window. All right. All of you probably know this image that Grant Wood did several times in prints. One version was called Puberty, and that's the one I'm referring to here. It was also, you may know it under the title Adolescence. And I got interested in this. Well, first of all, I love this image because isn't this what adolescence is like? You don't have feathers. And so this is called The Chickens Wise Up the Whippersnapper. So these are the chickens around not the chicken standing up, not the teenager, but the other chickens. You may think you're the top cornstalk, standing tallest and seeing the farthest, but the combine ain't going to give a hoot. You'll be cut down as fast as the rest. You may think you're as big as a grain silo, towering over all the other farm buildings, but the tornado can see you on the horizon, saying, "Here I am, come and pluck me." You may think that you're the lightning rod up on top of the barn, the peak of the roof. But when the lightning comes, liquid fire forking through the sky, who'll get hit? You may think you're the most stylish hen, plucked smooth, enveloped in goosebumps. But honey, it's just a face. It don't faze us. We've been there before. Sit down, grow up. Thank you. Thank you. And then one more here. Again, this is this is one of the group of 4 that the Cedar Rapids Museum published. And this is on Grant Wood's, I think this must be a lithograph, January. And there are different versions of this image, some without the tracks on the snow. You probably have seen these different ones. And so this one is different. The other poems, I've got people or a chicken talking, right? Just sort of riffing on what's in the painting. This is a different one. This is looking at the painting from the outside, and these are different things that a viewer of the image might think. On Grant Wood's January, haystacks, snow-covered, like cows in a thunderstorm, facing the same way. Rank and file soldiers, early morning formation, hushed close-order drill. Cotillion ladies in beige and white ballroom gowns dance in unison. Pyramid City, millennia of sand cover, home of ancient ghosts. Tracks of snowshoe hair lead to a triangle door in the closest stack, a comfy refuge within, hair taking a winter's nap. These are just in terms of form, these are all haiku. Each of the stanzas are a haiku, and the last one is a tanka, which is a slightly larger rather, Japanese form. And I'm using a pretty strict syllabic count here, 5, 7, 5 in each case, and then 57577 at the end. Haiku like that, written 575, are not popular these days, and I tend to stick with them because the rationale for people writing haiku in a different way these days is that the 575 is not actually a representation of the way that the Japanese think about and also write haiku. And so the 575 is just the version in English that developed. But for me, as a poet, I'm very focused on line break and what one can do with line breaks. And so here, I'm very consciously working with what happens at the end of a line, especially given the syllabic count that you're stuck with. How are we doing for time, Elaine? I can't hear you.
Sorry about that. Yeah, just fine.
Okay,
Reading.
all right. Well, I thought what I would do is I've got 9 poems here, and so I guess I've done 4 of them now. I'll just keep going. All right, this is one I wrote on the 19th of January. I'm currently working with the project, the Stafford Challenge, which is an international project where people write a poem a day for a year, right? So 365 poems. And I happen to know that this one was day 2. So that's why I know that it was exactly on the 19th, because the 17th, no, that's not right. It's on the 18th, because the day 17 was the first day. Okay. And this is, some of you probably have seen this image in person. It's a mural that's in Iowa State. And Iowa State brought me over there to have me look at some artwork and then write poems about them, right? And so, anyway, this is called Breaking the Prairie Sod, which is a WPA. And you might know that during the Depression, the government created work, right, for folks to do. And one of those was having artists create public art, and so, you've probably been in old post offices and so on where you see WPA art. And so this is a painting that was designed by Grant Wood and then painted by him and by others. I'm not sure who the others were, but probably students at Iowa State. I'm not sure. But anyway, Love and Tradition is the name of the poem, or title of the poem, After Breaking the Prairie Sod. And again, I'm focusing here on the 2 characters on the right. I'm sorry, on the left, the man and the woman, and then this horse. Love and Tradition. Hans stands relaxed behind the orange plow, hoisting the water jug up to his lips, cool liquid sluicing, lovely, down his throat. Mary, poised nearby, living out her vow of standing by Hans with this sweet drink, grips his hat, loving this man as his helpmeet. The plow horses wait patiently, traces hanging to the ground. The closest one flips his head at us, curious what we're about. The land spreads behind, beautiful spaces we now inhabit. Thanks, everybody. So that just got published at the end of January. That's brand new in their art on campus. They have poetry about the art on campus, and so some of you might know this lithograph. It's called Honorary Degree, And most people say that this is Grant Wood himself, receiving the honorary degree. And I think I just love the expression on that man's face. And what's happening here is that this person is receiving a degree from a college or a university, and there's a guy on the right, handing him a diploma, and then on the left we have a person, another high mucky muck, putting a hood over the person. And I originally did a version of another poem on this, which I don't have right here, but a really small one where I talked about how Grant Wood would probably be really tickled by something that Robert Frost said, because Robert Frost also received a lot of honorary degrees. And Frost, not so much what he said, but what he did, Frost took the hoods that he was given in these honorary degree presentations and had them made into a quilt. So anyway, okay. Honorary degree. 3 men in robes of velvet and satin beneath an American Gothic high window. I think that's an echo of the window in the house, behind them. 3 men in robes of velvet and satin beneath an American Gothic high window play out an age-old tableau, awarding an academic prize to a person of great note. It's rather like the Wizard of Oz, bestowing a medal on the Scarecrow for his smarts. The man on the left is handing a diploma to the one in the center, a rotund man who, most agreed, looks like Grant Wood himself. The man on the right is beginning to drape a velveteen hood over Grant, which mirrors the shape of the window, itself an echo of his most famous painting. This lithograph seems clearly a send-up of the whole honorary degree custom. Wood's avatar, placed right in the middle, has the mischievous look of a farm boy who'd rather be on a riverbank fishing. A brown trout would be a better catch than that diploma or that fancy hood. Well, all of you know a lot more about Grant Wood than I do, and so I hope that resonates with what you know about him. And then there's Nan. I was thinking when I saw this image, I was thinking that it's so different from the Nan we see, the model that we see in American Gothic, right? And so I was just riffing on that. Okay, Grant's homegirl. Grant Wood painted the sweet portrait of Nan as tribute to his sister. Poised in front of dark drapery, Nan glows with soft light in a loose-fitting beige blouse, in her hand a baby chick. Wood was inspired to paint her this way, probably, to compensate for portraying her in American Gothic as a dour-faced farm woman, blunt and sullen. Here, Nan serves as Wood's quiet Mona Lisa, a tender praise hymn done by a girl's big brother. That form, by the way, thank you. That form, by the way, is what's called a curtal sonnet. It's a small sonnet. It's not 14 lines that you expect. Instead, this was invented. The poet who invented it wanted to write 3/4 of a sonnet, and so this is 10.5 lines. That's exactly 3/4 in a particular rhyme scheme. And here we see Nan and hand, front and paint, light and compensate, and then front, paint, blunt, light, compensate, quiet. So I also use something called slant rhyme, where you get the rhyme slightly off, because I full rhyme, can be too much sometimes. All right. Harbinger. We talked about this last week, how this quilt that this woman is hanging up on a clothesline is like a quilt, and I've forgotten now. We mentioned what that other image was that had it. This was one of the last two paintings that Grant Wood did. As you know, he died in 1942, and so this is right before his death. And what struck me here was not so much the image as such, but the year, you know, that World War II, at least World War II was already going, but our involvement in World War II was going to come pretty soon. Harbinger. In 1941, Grant Wood could not have missed the impending fires of World War on the way. You can see it in the green sky here, a tornado coming. A plot of ground dark as new graves. Is this farmer planting or digging, seeding or mourning? Townspeople going about everyday life, clotheslines and lawnmowers. Pearl Harbor just months away. In Europe, shirtless men like this one dying in showers. Someday soon, he'll wear army green. And I mentioned earlier something about personal and honest and all of that, and my connection here is that I'm a Vietnam era vet. You know, I didn't go to Vietnam, but I was in the army during that time, and so some of that is coming through a little bit. And I'm also struck by the I've always been struck by the way that Grant Wood uses the color green. You know, but in this case, this would be a different kind of green, olive drab green. Okay. And then I hope Ignacio is listening, because this is the poem I wrote today, called Confirmed Bachelor. And this image that some of you may know, Joe mentioned the AAA, and this was a litho that Grant Wood did for the AAA. You know, as Joe was saying, that the AAA, their purpose was to get art into everyday people's houses. You know, but the thing that happened was that this particular image was not allowed to be mailed by the U.S. Post Office as being pornographic. And so I don't think they had the same, they had a very small run of maybe 150 of this particular image. Confirmed Bachelor. And of course, I hope that some of you, several of you are old enough to know that phrase, confirmed bachelor, right? That I don't think you hear very much these days, but I remember hearing all the time as a kid. And I always thought that the confirmed bachelor was like a Playboy, you know, that they went on a lot of dates, but yeah, anyway. All right, confirmed bachelor. Grant Wood was called a confirmed bachelor, mistakenly married, mostly living with Sister Nan. His litho, Sultry Night, banned by the U.S. Post Office as porn, a farmhand heaving a bucket, pouring water on his nude torso. Phallus right there out front, magnificent. Now, confirmed bachelor, that's polite code, not saying queer, or worse, though surely outsiders thought worse. Wood outwardly seemed like just a farm boy, but loved men inside. I'm thinking of revising that, not now. I was reading it to you, it occurred to me that could be misunderstood as the present moment, but it should probably say then confirmed bachelor. This is this form, you know, again, this is a Curtal sonnet, is the way that I write it is very tight. These are all 10-syllable words, 10-syllable lines, excuse me. And so there's not a lot of room, you know, to get stuff in there. Okay.
Well, Vince, thank you so much for sharing all those. How fun, 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 fun. And I think back, if I'm not mistaken, back in 2021, we had several people from this forum who also had poems published for that April celebration at CRMA. Um, uh, because it was based on ekphrastic poetry. Yeah, and so I'm so glad that you reminded us of that and harkened back and yeah. Anyway, and thank you for being inspired to hop the theme of leading into our next presentation. But before we do that, does anybody have any questions or comments for Vince Gutierrez, Iowa's Poet Laureate?
I think the whimsy in your poems is so beautiful. It's so subtle. And Grant Wood, when he painted, so many of his pictures had little whimsical thoughts in the paintings. And your poems are just such a perfect accompaniment. You couldn't ask for more. They're beautiful. Thank you for sharing so much.
Thank you, Marlis. I appreciate that. Especially from folks that know, that are so close to Grant.
I got to say, I know nothing about poetry, but I'm always in awe of these conversations around poetry. And I stumble into something by Elizabeth Bishop about a gas station or something, and I'm awed. Yeah, I don't know why, and I know nothing about it, right? But to have you join us in our forum and our love for Grant Wood, and this what you just did reminds me of like when I really love a song, then some artist I love covers that song I already love, and I get to have this new appreciation for someone's take, but like their art form is like a meta, way to appreciate the thing. I just, I'm babbling. I really enjoyed that. That was, that was fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. That's one of my favorite poems by Elizabeth Bishop, and I have forgotten the title. I think it might be Gas Station, but there's a line in it or an image in it where it's actually a gas station. I don't know if you all remember that Exxon, the gas company, used to be called Esso, ESSO, and in that poem, she talks about maybe a shelf full of oil cans, I guess. That's all say Esso, and so in the poem it goes, the cans all say so.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, Tom, what's
Well,
going on?
ironically, I was thinking about, I don't know anything about poetry either, and I'm not a poet by any means. But ironically, this morning I woke up and in a reverie, I wrote a poem, and I was like, I'm thinking about submitting it, and so your presentation was really encouraging. So I think I will submit it.
Oh,
Please
good.
do, please do.
Yeah.
Oh, through IPA?
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, good. Oh, good. So I can't ask you to speak of it here because that would be violating their rules.
Okay.
Otherwise, and there's the judge right there because it'll be submitted blind, right? So.
Right. Chances are I won't remember though. So.
Oh, well, I'm glad you achieved reverie. That's pretty cool, Tom. Oh my gosh. Well, any other comments? Or we could, like I said, we could circle back to all the things. It's a snow day tomorrow for some of us, so I'll stay up late. I don't care.
I just wanted to comment on the quilt because those of you who know, and so this is my only relationship with poetry is Jay Sigmund, and that he is a person that I became compulsive about because I didn't know who he was, and I found a box in the archives of the History Center where I was working, and it had things about him, and I wanted to share them with children, but I didn't know who he was. And now I own every single one of his books of poetry. But this is related to your question about that quilt. He was a good friend of Grant Wood's and convinced him that he should paint Iowa, and pointed out a quilt on the line as they were walking and said, like that, you don't have to copy French. You don't have to be a French copycat. Paint that quilt. And he did, and he painted it and gave it to Jay Sigmund. And I didn't know there was a connection between the two of them until I saw that painting just hanging on the wall of Jay Sigmund's daughter-in-law when I was trying to learn about Jay Sigmund. And now you can see it in that painting, which shows, and that was what the connection was. Your poetry is just fabulous, Vince. I just loved how your imagination and the moon talking, or the people. I just loved what you did. So thank you.
Thank you, Barbara. You know, this is my main message as poet laureate, is that poetry can be fun. You know, sometimes people are too serious about it, you know, and you know, I think that it probably goes back to grade school that you know, we might have had a teacher who introduced us to poetry and then asked us what it meant, which meant that the poem became a math problem, you know, and not just something that's fun to say.
Yeah, here. Yeah. Oh, goodness. Well, I think we're ready for the third leg of our three-legged stool of a session here. I'm going to set the table a little bit. So I prepared some some introductory remarks. I did do a presentation this year, but I've got something a little bit to say here at this moment as we come up on the last portion of our evening and this year's series. I'd like to invite us to consider the concepts of erasure and societal norms. And because I aspire for this forum to be a safe space to grapple with any tensions that may crop up in our engagement and perceptions of art, history, and culture within our all things Grant Wood sphere. There's plenty of oppressions to go around these days, and of course back in Grant Wood's era. And not one of them should be discounted nor erased, in my humble opinion. As a daughter of Grant Wood country with 6 generations of stories told among women in my family tree, I am more than a little familiar with double standards and gender-based oppressions. I know oppression is a strong word, but for me, it's a fitting one. First, let me say that it's a very old song to saddle women with the responsibility and burden of shame around all things related to heterosexuality, as if men have no responsibility in that regard. But this unspoken burden has certainly been at play over the generations. What does this have to do with Grant Wood? Well, silence and accommodation in the face of unspoken social norms, especially around sexuality, ruled the day. His day especially. Let's remember that during the time of Grant Wood and his sister Nan's life, they inherited myriad social controls. To expect a soft-spoken little sister and her gay brother to push against the norms and laws they were raised within would be to expect way too much from them. Does that make it less frustrating? Heck no. Does it make it all the more important to shine a light on the elements that were hidden or erased? Heck yeah. The illegality of homosexuality, the laws against women's financial, marital, reproductive, political autonomy were real. Nan was only 21 when she obtained the right to vote. Marital rape would not be prosecutable in Iowa until 1979. Women could not get loans in their own name without a male co-signer until 1974. Grant's sexuality was illegal in Iowa until 1978. Loving same-sex couples couldn't marry in Iowa until 2009. All this is to say that it is against this very real backdrop of legal and social threats that Grant, Nan, and the people of Iowa functioned, and to a different degree continue to. And there was no social safety net until 1935 to protect people from the financial system breakdowns, which they had and still have little control over. So as I ponder Grant Wood and his little sister Nan, I think a lot about the myriad oppressions under which they lived. They may not have thought of them as oppressions, but freedom to express one's identity fully was certainly not a thing. But the need to survive amidst unspoken codes of silence certainly were. So I ask, if you were Nan and Grant, what would you have done? So at this point in time, I just think it's a great moment for us to roll up our sleeves and learn, take a deep dive into the concept of erasure from friend of the forum and friend of ours. Some of us really enjoyed meeting Ignacio Darnaud when he came and visited Iowa a couple of years ago, got some boots on the ground, as it were, in Grant Wood country. And I know somebody, we were talking in the waiting room, some of us have read some of his work that appears online, or like in the, he's got an article in the National Journal, Gay and Lesbian Review here, which is wonderful. And he may talk more about that. And so I would love, Ignacio, for you to tell everybody about yourself, about your engagement with Grant Wood, and just enjoy presenting to us your perspective and point of view. And then we'll just have a fun time talking.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Perfect. So let me get the presentation, because I think everything that you're asking for is in it. Okay, so let me. Perfect. Can you see the visual? Perfect. So, well, first of all, thank you so much, Elaine, for including me in today's Grant Wood Country Forum. As you mentioned, I'm going to talk about how Grant Wood's sexuality infused his extraordinary work. And to give you a sense of my background, my project Breaking the Gay Code in Art encompasses lectures like this, articles, my Instagram, and a documentary series in the works, in which I uncover how, in spite of enormous repression, queer artists and queer imagery in art, both openly and through secret codes, have revolutionized mainstream art and culture from the Renaissance all the way to present times. And before I start, I have two quick caveats. You're going to hear me use the term homoerotic art a lot. By that, I mean an image that is not overtly sexual, but is very appealing to the gay viewers in a subtle or not so subtle way. And I will probably use the terms gay and queer indistinctively. I'm sure you know that the word queer, which was used as an insult against the LGBTQ community, lately it has been broadly embraced as an inclusive umbrella term for the whole community, and also as a proud defiance of heteronormativity. So my obsession for Grant Wood took me to Iowa to visit all the iconic locations from his life and his work, from the site of the home where he grew up as a child on the left, to his resting place on the right. And I have to thank many of you today in this forum, such as Elaine and Paul Joel and Joe Coffey, Jim Hayes, for your hospitality, which made it a truly unforgettable trip. This trip was really instrumental for the article I wrote about Grant Wood for the Harvard Gay and Lesbian Review. And the article was included in a book published by the Grant Wood Country Forum. But if you're interested in reading it, just email me. I will share my contact info at the end of the talk. My background is in film. I was the head of international marketing for Disney and for Sony Pictures, and I produced 3 very successful films in Mexico. And I left it all behind over a decade ago to focus on my project, Breaking the Gay Code in Art. And one of the film projects I've been trying to produce is a television miniseries about Grant Wood's extraordinary life, ideally with Matt Damon as a star. So let's get on with it. I've been researching Grant Wood for a very long time, and I've seen how books and exhibitions have stuck to the official story, this irresistible image he created of the homespun artist of rural America, keeping him in the closet, which is understandable because it's very difficult to attach the gay label to someone who represents the American heartland values. But this fable, as it was described, was finally put to bed by a retrospective at the Whitney Museum in 2018, which declared that Grant Wood's homosexuality is the code that unlocks the truth to his art. And I'm going to walk you through some examples of how Grant Wood inserted his sexuality in his works, whether openly or in a coded way. Grant Wood was born in 1891, which coincidentally was the year that the term homosexuality was first used in English. And as I'm sure you know, he grew up not far from the Anamosa Penitentiary, where gay men could be locked up to 10 years in prison and even get castration. As I'm going to show you, Grant Wood's sexuality had a tremendous impact in his life and his work. The other key factor was his deep bond with his mother, Hattie, and his sister, Nan, whom he painted in these two portraits. Before I go on, I want to mention something really important. There is nothing happenstance in Grant Wood's work. Everything is there for a reason. And he stages every little detail in his paintings, including the use of symbolic imagery, which he probably learned from German and Flemish masters. So we need to keep this in mind when we analyze his work. So for starters, overall, I think it's fair to say that he paints dashing, sensual, homoerotic images of men, some of them nude, while he paints in many cases unflattering female images. And I believe only one or two female nudes have been cataloged among his works. Grant Wood was determined to become a real artist, and he knew that studying in Europe was essential. So he went to Paris several times, but first in the 20s, where he studied Impressionism, the German and Flemish masters, and that's where he experienced freedom and probably gay life for the first time. And it was during those days that he painted a large male nude, The Spotted Man on the right, which is one of the only two of his paintings that he kept in his possession until his death. Wood's homosexuality was an open secret in Cedar Rapids, where a small gay and lesbian subculture was tolerated as long as it remained invisible. Right after he came back from Europe, Wood told a friend, "I guess I'm not interested in women." And the owner of his favorite bar said that Grant Wood was gay only when he was drunk. But in all fairness, coming out would have threatened Wood's reputation, his freedom, his income. Maybe that's why he carved in a school bench the motto, "The way of the transgressor is hard." But his armor started cracking when the Des Moines Tribune mentioned his bachelorhood, his feminine tastes, his appearance. So as a protective mechanism, Wood fabricated a new persona. So he shaved his bohemian beard, the one he grew up in France, and he adopted denim overalls as his uniform, implying that his work was man's work, branding himself the farmer artist of America, wholesome, and of course, heterosexual. So Wood realized that his early impressionistic work made him appear less than manly, and he pretended that he never took it seriously, calling it wrist work. And he embraced a new art movement, regionalism, which was truly American and glorified rural America. But it's interesting that when you look at his photographs of the time up close, such as the one on the left, you realize that he's wearing dandy shoes. The denim overalls are just a costume. So in 1927, one of Wood's former students, Arnold Pyle, became his assistant. Pyle was 18, Wood was 36. Here you see them at the right in a photo at Stone City Art Colony, where Wood took a respite with a homosocial crowd of teachers and students away from his family's supervision. Pyle was good-looking, tall, athletic, with thick black hair, and heterosexual. Exactly the type of man that Wood continued to fall for over and over throughout his life. And he disguised his desire for all these young men under the facade of paternal affection towards an admiring pupil. So Wood and Pyle spent their days in Wood's small studio, watched over by Wood's mother, who was in her 70s at the time, and his sister Nan, who spent long periods with them. So it is in this very charged environment, actually I would have loved to be a fly on the wall, that Wood painted Arnold Comes of Age as his loving gift for Arnold's 21st birthday. In one of his final public appearances in Chicago, Wood admitted that he poured his emotions and longings into his art. And Arnold Comes of Age is a perfect example. It's very revealing that this is one of the only 3 portraits that Wood created out of affection, not as a commission, in his career. The other 2 being the ones I showed you of his mother and his sister. So Arnold Comes of Age reveals Wood's desire for Pyle in coded, intimate images, which Arnold would have been able to decode. There is a melancholic couple's theme in the painting. 2 trees, 2 haystacks, 2 bushes, 2 men. However, all of them are separated by something that stops them from being together, alluding to his yearning for Pyle. And Pyle's dark sweater casts a gloomy shadow on the 2 nude young men skinny dipping in the lower right corner that evoke the traditional images of Adam and Eve expelled from paradise. But in this painting, they have become Adam and Adam, with one of them thrusting his buttocks backwards provocatively. They're far away from the prying eyes and the laws that could have sent Wood to prison had he acted on his feelings for Pyle. And on the left, we see how a butterfly lands on Pyle's sleeve. So the traditional interpretation could be that this is a metaphor for Arnold's transformation from a young man into a mature man. But this butterfly has many other layers. In France, where he had been recently, papillon, butterfly, was a term used for gay men. And the butterfly tea shop was their favorite hangout in town. And just as the butterfly disguises its beauty from predators, Wood had to do the same as a gay man. And then Arnold's belt, which was probably also a gift from Wood, features Arnold's initials, A.P. And Wood signed his name next to Arnold's initials, probably so that at least in this painting, they could be together forever. 1930 was the most important year in Grant Wood's career. In addition to Arnold Comes of Age, he painted American Gothic, which turned him into an instant celebrity. Nan, his sister Nan, who posed for American Gothic, denied her brother's homosexuality until her deathbed. On the right, you see a letter I own by Nan, in which she tells a friend in 1975 that she is very unhappy about how the director of the Art Institute of Chicago referred to American Gothic. Nan says, quote, "There is nothing sentimental or fairy-like in the painting whatsoever. Who is he anyway to downmouth their most famous painting?" And it's interesting how a review of American Gothic at the time from a Boston critic said, Wood must have been tortured by these people who couldn't understand the joy of art within him and tried to crush his soul. And I truly believe that this critic was onto something. Considering that Arnold Comes of Age was created the same year than American Gothic, it's really not far-fetched to interpret that what American Gothic truly depicts is Grant Wood being watched like a hawk by his sister, wearing their mother's clothes and the cameo, with Wood's dentist posing as his alter ego. In my lectures about art history, I talk about how throughout history, artists use classical and mythological imagery as their alibi to express homoerotic desires. These are 3 of the thousands of examples in art history. Early in his career, just like many queer artists did before and after him, Wood created classical mythological images which became the perfect cover-up to express his same-sex desires. On the left, you can see the central panel of Wood's triptych, The First 3 Degrees of Freemasonry, featuring an image inspired by Harmodius and Aristogeiton, who died in 514 BC and who are considered heroes for removing the Athenian tyranny, opening the way for democracy. They were celebrated for their bravery and sexual fidelity to one another in statues such as the one on the right. I really believe that this idea of male comradeship was a major longing for Wood throughout his life. On the left, we see one of Wood's early paintings created soon after he returned from Europe. So the image echoes the mythological god Narcissus, but also the iconic painting by Flandrin on the right, which is described by many historians as the first gay pinup in history. It's interesting that Wood never exhibited his painting on the left publicly. So when Wood got the commission to create the stained glass for Cedar Rapids Veterans Memorial Building, he worked on his sketches with Arnold Pyle at the recreation room of the Quaker Oats factory. So the sensually homoerotic study on the left was inspired by the famous classical statue by Polykleitos in the middle. But Pearlie Wood thought that it was too risque and he abandoned it. So according to the book Grant Wood Alive by R. Tripp Evans, the detail on the right depicts Wood's self-portrait next to a shirtless Arnold Pyle. But the specialist Terry Van Dorsten says that the American Revolution soldier is not Grant Wood, it's Robert S. Evans, and the shirtless cannoneer is the football player Jerome Chris. Wood also created homoerotic mythological images. On the left, he depicts Silenus, who was the tutor of Bacchus, the god of wine. And this is actually a portrait of Charles Manson. Not that Charles Manson, but the president of the Cedar Rapids Chamber of Commerce at the time. In the middle, we see a section of Adoration of the Home, which features homoerotic images of shirtless builders and a semi-naked image of Mercury that was inspired by Gian Bologna's sculpture on the right. So, as I mentioned, the regionalist art movement provided Grant Wood with a masculine farmer cover. But Wood had to remain closeted because the group's leader, Thomas Benton, was extremely homophobic. And remember, I mentioned how Wood poured all his emotions and longings in his paintings. So, unable to express his sexuality openly, Wood created homoerotic rural scenes in which he sublimated his repressed desires towards the farmers he grew up with in Iowa. For instance, in Saturday Night Bath on the left, he shows two young farmers, one stripping his shirt off near a shirtless one who is dipping a bucket into a very phallic trough, which happens to be next to a phallic log on the ground. Remember, nothing is happenstance in Grant Wood's work. Or on the right, Spring in Town, in which the focal point of the image are the tight pants and buttocks of a shirtless farmer. And this house is still standing, and I was thrilled to visit it with Paul Jewell during my trip, and the present owners welcomed us into it. It was an unforgettable moment. Something I should have mentioned earlier is that Wood had a whimsical and wicked sense of humor, which he expressed in his work. And I bring this up in relation to several well-known images by Grant Wood. On the left, in Breaking the Prairie Sod, the farmer is holding a phallic plow handle located next to his crotch. His female companion covers her sexual parts. She doesn't seem to want anything to do with it. And in Farmer with Pigs and Corn on the right, Grant Wood winks at the young man's sexual potency with a daring placement of the corn. Wood's sense of humor is also in full display in another section of Adoration of the Home, where the cow's ear has a very peculiar shape at the farmer's crotch. And Wood can't stop himself. He produced a lithograph titled Fertility, featuring a penis-like silo and erect corn ears jutting upwards, defying gravity. This is a very famous painting by Wood, Dinner for Treasures, that was inspired by his childhood memories of his family farm. So the setting evokes religious paintings, particularly The Last Supper by Fra Angelico. And in doing so, what Wood is doing, he's endowing the farmers with the dignity of biblical disciples participating in a sacred meal. But once again, there's much more than meets the eye. Wood inserts himself in this clearly homosocial scene by writing the year 1892 on the barn wall, alluding to his birth year, although he was actually born in 1891. And some art historians point out how the tablecloth echoes the farmer's perfectly round buns. When I saw this painting in San Francisco very recently, it was my partner who noticed how Wood chose to portray the farmers in a way that suggests couples kissing, dancing, looking at each other longingly. The one on the lower right is looking at us, daring us to question what's going on. So we know that Grant Wood was a stickler for detail. He spent hours, if not days, painting these farmers. He could have easily chosen a layout that avoided any physical contact between the farmers, but he specifically portrayed the men interacting with each other, probably acting out once again on his longings. In 1936, Wood created his only major painting during his marriage, Spring Turning. So at first glance, it depicts a bucolic farming landscape with rippling hills, but on a closer look, you discover the massive contours and the sensual back and buttocks of a male farmer wearing overalls. He even painted the back pockets of the overalls. And this extraordinary painting was attacked in the press as queer. So Grant Wood's illustrations for the book Main Street also feature coded queer imagery. Let's start with Sentimental Yearner on the left. In the book, this character is described as a professional bachelor who is not one of the real men. And the green carnation suggests femininity, and it was used as a code for gay men to identify each other since the Oscar Wilde days. And this character gets married in the book, just like Wood had just got married overnight to Sarah Sherman Maxon, a former opera singer who was 7 years older than him and a grandmother. Following the wedding, Sarah's son, Sherman, and his family moved in with them. And following his usual pattern, Grant Wood was immediately smitten with a handsome 20-year-old man, lavishing money and attention on him and even trying to adopt him. Sherman posed for the radical on the right, holding on to a very phallic baton. In 1939, Wood created the suggestively entitled lithograph Sultry Night, in which a farmer pours water over his naked body next to a phallic trough and erect tree. So when Wood showed his friends the original painting that inspired the lithograph, they reacted negatively. And then the US Postal Service refused to distribute the lithograph on the mail on the charge of obscenity. So Wood got furious, and in a very revealing act of self-censorship, he cut off and burned the nude from the painting that inspired the lithograph. On the right, you can see what's left from it. So Wood paid the price of not using a coded image, and he never produced a male nude again. So did I mention that I'm obsessed with Grant Wood's work? So I commissioned a fantastic Los Angeles artist, Danny Gagliotti, to create a painting featuring Wood's iconic homoerotic imagery. And here it is. I have it in my office right now. The phallic silo and cord, the sensual fields, the semi-naked farmers, even the butterfly. So Nan Wood died at 91, 48 years after her brother. And in her book about Grant, Nan denies his homosexuality. She ignores Grant's relationship with his assistants. She relegates Arnold Comes of Age to a paragraph, and she perpetuates myths about Wood's supposed female lovers. She continually sued biographers who, quote, attempt to slur her brother's good name, and she burned Wood's personal letters because, quote, they were unimportant. So maybe that's what this dark painting by Grant Wood, Return to Bohemia, is all about. With all the characters, including Nan and Hattie, with their eyes closed, blind to see Grant Wood for who he really was. I want to end my presentation circling back to Arnold Pyle. As I mentioned, he was an instructor with Wood at the Stone City Art Colony, and a couple of years later, he was part of Grant's team creating the murals for Iowa State University. But the relationship seemed to strain because Pyle signed a letter with 15 other students collaborating in the murals, complaining about Wood. In fact, the meeting organizing this protest was at Arnold Pyle's studio. And Grant Wood was very distraught by this, and he never did any more public art. And in 1973, Arnold Pyle attended the first Grant Wood Art Festival in Wood's birthtown, Anamosa, and then, sadly, Arnold Pyle died in a car accident traveling back to Cedar Rapids. But this is not the ending I envisioned for Wood's life. I think he would have been thrilled to know that Iowa became the third state to recognize same-sex marriage. So I came up with a poetic, imaginary letter to his assistant and unrequited love, Arnold Pyle. So here it is. July 1st, 1930. My dearest Arnold, I am shaking like a leaf, but I really need to do this. I'm writing this letter, opening my heart to you on your 21st birthday. I'll probably never be brave enough to send it to let you know how much I've always loved you. I still remember the day you became my student. You stood out from everyone else with your long neck and piercing eyes, shy but always attentive and showing so much promise as an artist. I was so excited when you became my assistant. What a joy it was spending my days with you in such tight quarters. I couldn't wait to lay my eyes on you as soon as the sun rose and we started working. Did you ever know how I truly felt about you? I remember the glorious summers we spent at the art colony as if they were yesterday. Painting, eating by the campfire. The days we went swimming, I relished how the glorious Iowa sun caressed your body, just the way I would have liked to. I've never been so happy, even in my bohemian days in Paris, when I could be myself for the first and very last time. I have a surprise gift for you on this very special birthday. I've been working on a new painting in secret while I was creating American Gothic, sketching your portrait while you were going about your work, unaware of my loving gaze. I hope you like the title, Arnold Comes of Age. I tried to capture your slender body, your strong neck, and the dark hair I zoomed over. But I don't know if it does you justice, Arnold, my wonder of nature. Please accept this painting as my token of love for you, dreamy, longing, and melancholic. I have filled it with intimate images, which I hope only you will be able to interpret. I picture us naked and free, innocent. The butterfly is my tribute to the countless hours we spent at the Butterfly Tea Shop, sharing stories and projects, twin souls in spite of our age difference. I sign my name next to your initials to be united forever. Arnold, on this 21st birthday, you are this butterfly who has transformed into the radiant man I'm finally proud to say I love with all my heart. Your Grant. Whew. So that's it. Thank you so much for your attention. If you want to know more about my work, make sure you follow me on my Instagram, which is at the top of the slide. And in the bottom is my email in case you want to contact me. So thank you. And if you have any questions, I'm all yours.
Well, I'll tell you what, I would love to follow immediately with my response of Nan, and then we'll open it up and we can go as long as we want. Okay? Thank you. Oh, I'm looking forward to having some conversation, but I want to represent a little bit of Nan's point of view. So I wrote a little piece. It's almost envision it almost a song because it's heavy on rhythm. but it's called What's a Nan to Do? Hello, my name is Nan Wood Graham. I'm the baby sister of a famous man. Now, I know a lot of people wonder about who he was, so I'll tell you a lot, but not everything, because some things are meant to be kept in house. That's just the way it was. I'll never let Grant's secrets out. Now, my big brother had a twinkle in his eye, a slant in his smile, and a wit that was wry. I worshipped him, and mother did too. For a long while, he was our man of our house, and for that we possess a barn full of gratitude. Boy, they sure called my brother everything and then some: satirist, socialist, fascist, native Iowa son, communist, isolationist, flag waver too. But make no mistake, he was a lot of fun and nobody's fool. You think I don't know how they spoke of his inclinations? You think I didn't know about the implications? You can bet your flock of Plymouth Rock hens closets were meant for clothes and for safety. That's all there was to it, or the end. So what if I maybe did burn some of his letters? Plenty of people do that sort of thing. Society was so full of unspoken norms. Success required reputations, which needed tending. But know this: if you insult Grant's art, you insult the man. Then I take it personally. Protecting my brother was and will always be my last stand. Oh, and if I get a little bit of limelight, fun, and attention, consider that I am his closest family. It just might be my right. Right, Grant? This is my sisterly contention.
Thank you, Nan.
I want to hear what Grant Wood has to say after hearing that.
Oh.
It was beautiful, Elaine. Really, not. I loved it. Oh,
But Ignacio and I have had very animated discussions, and I just think it's fun. I love that we are having at this space right now where that can exist. So
I mean, like I said in the lecture, I completely understand why that happened. My job is, however, to connect the sexuality to the work. That's my job. Not to judge, but to connect.
yeah. So let's be sure to open this up if anybody's got any questions or want to ask Ignacio anything. Let's see here.
Well, I'd say a couple of things. I know Ignacio and really enjoyed having him here in Iowa. I also think that he's probably, with his work, he's the best around. I mean, I've read everything that he's written. Every time I hear him speak or read something, I discover something else about Grant Wood. He takes me down paths different than the paths I've always frequented. I remember when I first read Trip Evans' book. I remember when I first read Sue Taylor's book, and it opened up so many more ideas for me. And that's what Ignacio does every time. Just, recently when he sent me those images from Dinner for Threshers of the men sitting across from each other, a brand new discovery for me. And I told him this. I said, I've looked at that painting 1,000 times and I never saw what he brought to me. So it's so nice to have all of these people with all of these impressions of an artist. I just really enjoyed it, Ignacio, and I'm glad you're doing the work you're doing, not only for Grant Wood, but for so many artists out there who have, I hate to label anybody, but who have sexuality as part of their art. I find that very real and very welcoming.
Thank you, Paul. I'm moved by your words because I value you so much. And but every artist's sexuality is reflected in their art. So you know what I'm saying. So that is just one example.
Hey, Ignacio, could you speak to that? Speaking of current day erasure,
Yes.
that famous artwork that is being censored right now or erased.
Yeah, I just wrote an article in Out Magazine that has gotten a lot of attention, over 2.5 million views. It's about an installation that is taking place right now at the Smithsonian National Portrait Gallery in Washington, D.C., of an artist, Felix Gonzalez Torres, who died of AIDS in '96. And all his work is really about AIDS and the loss of his partner, particularly this installation, which is a pile of candy, which it means to represent the exact body of, the exact weight of his partner's body before he died from AIDS, 175 pounds. And you, the visitor of the museum, are encouraged to get the candy. And as the candy depletes, it's a metaphor for the partner's depletion from AIDS. And when the candy pile is, replenished, he's giving his partner eternal life. So that's the meaning of the installation. But you wouldn't know that from the museum, which is completely ignoring the explanation of the installation. And this is a concerted effort to erase the connection to AIDS and queerness of the artist. It's really horrific.
Thank you. Yeah. I mean,
It's happening. Anyone else? Any other questions? Well, thank you for your attention and for being receptive to these thoughts.
Thank you so much. Erasure and censoring and not allowing space for full authenticity is something that we grapple with constantly, where the boundaries are, where the safe spaces are. So anyway, thank you. Anybody want to circle back and talk about anything? This is our final session for this season. And I encourage anybody, you all have my email. So if you have suggestions or ideas and or anything about next winter, feel free to share them. Suggestions for excursions or anything like that. Last summer we had wonderful excursion to Coe College and also out to the fall plowing site. So that was really, really a neat day. And so, we're open to keeping the door open both winter and summer for this group to encounter each other. And let's see, what did we want to reminded people of that in the world of Grant Wood happenings, the Figgy has fall plowing, a new exhibition featuring that, a new wing, I guess, John Deere wing.
Elaine?
Yeah, Linda.
I just wanted to say thank you, not only to you, but to all the presenters, because this year's session has just been outstanding. The others have been good, but this is the best one yet. Just thank you to everyone. It's just a wonderful world to be in.
Oh, thank you, Linda. That's very nice. Well, it's great having you. And thank you for sharing your words and poetic words and heart with us regularly. Appreciate that. So yeah, we're establishing some pretty deep pockets here in terms of engagement of people who present and Joe, what's up?
Just a quick shout out, Ignacio. Thank you for what you do. It's a tricky thing in this universe and the art world and the Grant Wood fan world and the interesting segmented buckets of Grant Wood fandom who want to see things and not see other things. And I think your work in identifying previously quiet third rails and then kind of giving the confidence to understand them and then helping people who grapple with some things and letting us understand how to use new lenses to better appreciate Wood's work. That's a tricky thing to do, and I appreciate your finesse, and I really appreciate you, sir.
Thank you. I love the word finesse, so thank you.
Elaine, I
Well,
had one bit of news. I
oh,
discovered that the corn murals at the Sioux City Art Museum are
okay.
being shipped to be stabilized and restored, I guess, in Minneapolis at the end of this month. So if you want to see the before, you need to take a road trip up to Sioux City and see them. I think they're leaving on the 23rd, maybe.
Ah,
So it
oh,
might be an interesting little road trip to see them before and then the after when they get back.
they really are nifty. I saw them in Council Bluffs, I believe, a couple years ago. If we're thinking of the same ones, yeah. Yeah, really neat. Good to know, Tom. Thank
Well,
you.
yeah, there's a set from the hotel that was in Council Bluffs, but then there was another set, is
Okay.
what I understand, up at Sioux City. I
Oh,
don't know if it's this from the
okay.
same
All right.
hotel, but because there were 3 hotels, right? The Roosevelt, the
Right. Oh,
Chieftain,
right.
and then there was another one in Waterloo, I think. So I don't know
Okay.
where they all are, but whatever the set is that's at Sioux City is being taken down and restored or stabilized.
Okay. Okay. Sounds good. Well, goodness. Yeah, well, that's good news that they're valued. My goodness, At least there's that. Okay.
Thank you again, Elaine. You do such a beautiful job every year. I'm so glad to be a part of the forum. It's
Well,
been wonderful.
thank you, Marlis. I mean, it's a labor of love for all of us.
Oh, yeah, you can tell everybody
Yeah.
does enjoy it, but you're the organizer and we value you a lot.
Oh, thank
So
you.
you know.
That's very sweet.
You know, I've run into in exploring the idea of what does it mean to collect and who are the collectors, and I crack up. One of the Koch brothers owns a couple of big Grant Woods, and every now and then he will hold some exhibition. He'll convince some museum to let him show off what he owns, and it's a bunch of random, famous, expensive stuff. And it's always funny to me because the critics, the people who really put an effort into understanding art and criticism after the exhibition they'll like shred the idea of why this is a terrible collection, there's no cohesiveness, there's no and it's just so interesting to think about, wow, like from Peggy Guggenheim to whoever, like there's something about taste and curation, and whoever can put together a collection of things. Curators, we admire them for doing this at their museums and putting together these great exhibitions that we love to see and learn from. And I think there's a thread to pull from that into what you do here, Elaine. Thank you very much. And, as Vince was talking today, it just, again, I'll admit I know nothing about poetry, but what he brings to the table for experts as well as noobs like me, and your ability to create a schedule of programma, and I'm happy to be a part of it, but even more happy to be in the audience as everyone else gets their chance to share what they do, and your curation goes a long way. We really appreciate it. Thank you, Elaine.
You're so welcome, Joe. Appreciate you.
And since
So-
Joe brought up the Koch brothers, there is one Koch brother that lives, I think, in Pennsylvania, and he owns Arbor Day. And a friend of some of us lives in Des Moines, Bill Sherman, who's former head of the ISEA. He's also the man, along with some others, that are responsible for Arbor Day being placed on our quarter here in Iowa. He has a campaign going that he would really like to get Arbor Day back in Iowa again for viewing. Some have also said that the Koch brother, which he often refers to as the good Koch brother, draw your own conclusions there. But some have said it's for sale or might be donated by that Koch brother to a worthy museum. Be great to have it back here at the Stanley or at Cedar Rapids, Davenport, Dubuque, any of those towns. It would be nice to see it in person.
Mm.
Yeah, it would. Certainly would. And by the way, when Amy from the Cedar Rapids Library sends me this recording from tonight, I'll be sure to send out a blanket email, just like I've done, to everybody on the list, so that you get it when I get it. And then we'll go from there. And I'll probably put things on the Grant Wood Facebook page from time to time, but in the meanwhile, connect with each other, connect with me if you like, and just keep the interest and all the things going. So this is about what I expected, that we would settle in for a nice, 2 hours plus, and we done did it. Hats off again to everybody for being here and doing what we do. It makes winter, I don't know, it just makes winter a little better, it feels like, to be among you all. It really does. I appreciate you all for showing up. So let's do it again next year. So take care, and Ignacio and Joe and Vince, thank you again for what you did tonight for us, everything. So hats till we meet again.